And
All right, hello everybody. Thank you for hi. Thank you for coming to our panel. It's a really interesting and a really privileged opportunity to be able to talk about the work that we're going to be doing and that we keep doing, especially since it's a thing that has almost become a appreciated, expected part of GDQs, at least for summer, and that is racing. Custom racing specifically. And that is what we do, and that is what we wanted to talk about today. So when we talk about on your mark, get set, now what we mean is what all goes into planning a race like this? What all goes into making sure everything fits together and it comes across okay? And how can you adapt the things that we do potentially for your community so that other communities can start doing the types of races that the Super Mario World community has been doing for a few years now. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce us real quick. My name is Dr. No. I have been involved with RHR, which I will do my best to keep calling it RHR for reasons. I've been involved with RHR since January of 2019. I serve as an admin for the RHR Discord and the RHR Twitch channel, and I was a producer on both the 2019 and 2022 custom Super Mario World relays.
I'm Fury Falafel. I've been involved in RHR since its inception. It actually started at a GDQ, not unlike this one. So we're super happy to have been given the opportunity to sort of showcase ourselves at a place we consider our roots. I've personally been wearing all sorts of hats behind the scenes, some more frequently than others, and some less frequently. But I was also pretty heavily involved in the 2022 custom relay race.
cool. I am Fane, pronounced Fane. I used to be a racer with RHR, and then I eventually graduated to doing kind of like odd jobs, and eventually I started doing so many odd jobs that they said, "Do you want to be staff?" And I said, "Sure." So I just kind of take care of a lot of administrative stuff, but I also do largely playtesting for our weekly races and also for the 2022 relay that we did last year.
So we keep throwing around RHR a lot, and to give some context for what that is, 5 years ago, in fact, believe it or not, at SGDQ, a group of Super Mario World players and custom creators got together and said, we should do this more often. And this is, we should come up with reasons to bring people together to both play Super Mario World Kaizo and to have people make Super Mario World Kaizo. We wanted it to be a community welcoming place where everyone could come together, everyone could celebrate the work being done and celebrate the gameplay being showcased. And so after 5 years ago, a group of people, including Carl Sagan42, GlitchCat7, Nexus, Atari, and Chris G, got together and put together the first RHR. That was 5 years ago, and pretty much every week since, we have done a custom race of Super Mario World. It's 99% of the time Kaizo, because that's where all of our roots lie. But we have branched off into other areas as well. And other games. We've had races of Yoshi's Island. We've had races of Super Mario Brothers 2 and 3. We've also put on fan game specific, retro modded fan game specific charity marathons. Hack Attack marathons. And those kind of give a chance for us to raise money for charity as well. But it also gives creators and players a foundation for which they can build up their skills to potentially submit to a GDQ or another charity marathon in the future. But specifically for the purposes of what we're talking about today, 2019, we put together a group of people that put on a relay race. We were very inspired by the great work done by the Mario Maker, our cousins in the Mario Maker community. And Mario Maker races had been a staple of GDQ to that point. I think the first one was almost the year Mario Maker was raced, 2016. So we have had a lot of opportunity to see Mario Maker do this. And we saw that and thought to ourselves, hey, we can do that, but we can bring our community's unique twist to it. We can make our levels shine, we can make our creators shine, and we can make our players rock stars. And so we put together the first Kaizo relay race in 2019. We were going to do one for 2020, and then the world kind of told us you should probably not do this right now. So it took us a while to come back to it, but in 2022, if you were here or you remember watching, we had the Legends of the Hidden Thwimple relay race. That was organized by the three of us on stage, plus an army of people, which we'll get into in a little bit. But just to kind of share with you some of the work we've done, we've done these two relays at GDQs in the past. Both of them were very successful. Both of them raised a lot of money for Doctors Without Borders, which was the goal all along. But they also gave new creators and new streamers a chance to showcase their skill and showcase their work in a way that we couldn't have done before. And so we want to talk about how we did it, or how we did it and why we want to do it differently going forward based on our experiences in the past. So I wanted to talk about what it's like to put on this type of custom race. But before we get too deep in the weeds, I want to talk about why. Why would you want to do something like this in your community? If your community has a vibrant level creator scene or a modding scene, you would probably benefit from this type of activity for 3 reasons. 1, the racers look good. Racers, it hits different when you're playing something on stage and it feels more unexpected. It feels more in the moment. Rehearsed speedruns, practice speedruns are foundational, they're crucial, they're phenomenal. But there's something different about that race that just hits that little different. And it really makes the racers look amazing. And one of the reasons why we wanted to put this on is so that we could give our racers a showcase. We could give our racers a chance to show how good they are in a way that doesn't pressure them to do things like have to commentate their own work or focus on showing off for a good show. They can just play what's in front of them at the highest level they can and focus on that and come out looking like $1,000,000. So that's one. Secondly, it makes your makers look good. And this was one of the biggest reasons why we did what we did. Our community is nearly as old as SMW itself. We are nearing the 20th anniversary of the founding of Super Mario World Central, if we haven't already passed it. And we have an extensive roster of people that have created resources and levels and fan games for Super Mario World. We wanted to give them as much a platform as the runners. And so because of that, we wanted to put the makers in a position where they can put every bit of their creative potential out there and kind of pool our resources to put on a show that not only makes the racers look good, but makes the levels they're playing and the game that they're playing look so fun, look so exciting, look so interesting and engaging. Some of the things that came out, Dita the Fourth, who's back in the audience, the 2-time maker for our relay races, her levels kind of opened and expanded people's ideas of what custom Mario can do. If those of you that remember last year's race, Furpy McFrosting's Cyberkinesis level, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it for you. Watch it. It's one of the best custom levels of Mario ever made. And we want to give more people the chance to do that. So this is a way for us to show off. And combined, when the racers look good and the makers look good, the entire community is the star of the show. It's not just one person's run. It's not just one maker's game. It is the entire community coming together and putting on as best a show as we can in front of a crowd that can appreciate and celebrate it. Ultimately, to try and raise money for Doctors Without Borders, which is the goal here, but also to make our community show what it can do. And so that's why we do it. That's sort of our philosophy behind what goes into creating it and organizing it. The trick comes in actually doing it. And I'm going to kind of let Fawful here start from the beginning and kind of walk through our process in how we do the things that we do.
Yeah. So, of course, everyone, when you get to the stage, you see the racers first and foremost, right? They're the ones that are physically present on that stage. They're the ones holding the controllers. They're pressing the buttons. So you can't have a race without racers. One of the things that I was going to say borrowed, but perhaps stole from the maker community was the idea of having teams of racers. You could theoretically have it be a 1 versus 1 race, but making it larger teams, having a 3x3 format or a 4 against 4 format, really helps elevate the community aspect. We don't want this to be player A versus player B, because that makes all of the makers, that makes all of the other people who invested their time and energy into the game, it diminishes their impact, right? Something that is definitely arbitrary, though, and also stolen from Maker, was the idea of chair swapping, right? If you've seen any of our previous showings, then you've probably seen the shifting of musical chairs as racers will rush up to the screen when their time comes up, do their attempts at the level, and then pass back the controller to the next player. That's something that is pretty fluid. That's something that if you're trying to do this yourself in the future, read the community. Understand, like, what is the community looking for? What is the difficulty of your race? Sometimes consistency is built off of repeated attempts, right? So if players are cycling, that's fewer attempts to actually look at the level. But, of course, it's not all just the racers. Doc has mentioned that the 3 of us represented the SGDQ 2022 race as managers. We call them producers within the org of RHR, but the goal is just piloting the community to make the best show possible, right? So that's coordinating, figuring out who is going to be filling out these last 3 items on this slide, right? Making sure that things are on track to provide the best experience possible. Of course, one of the first questions that we have to answer as managers is who is going to be making the levels? I know a lot of people who love the idea of creation, who love level design, who deserve to be showcased. And unfortunately, the talent in Super Mario World is so much larger than we could ever fit in a single time slot on stage. So it's a tough decision to really work down to who is actually going to get to showcase their work, and who is going to be freshly discovered when someone sees that run on GDQ stage and joins the community because of it. Once we have made that decision, though, just making the levels is not necessarily enough, right? We need to streamline the experience. A stage like Games Done Quick doesn't appreciate the idea of loading up 6 separate games in order to switch levels, right? We have a little bit of time between levels to commentate and calm down and ready ourselves for the next one, but it's not really enough time to switch an entire game. So I would almost liken it to an indie game dev studio. We are just putting together art. We're putting together, for Super Mario World specifically, an overworld. We're putting together sometimes custom music. You know, all of these elements will come together to create a full hack. And once you have that built, then you need to test it, right? We're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail later, But suffice it to say, your game breaking on stage in front of 60,000, 100,000 people, that's kind of bad.
Not ideal.
Not ideal in the slightest. So testing is what helps you understand what the event is going to be like before you get on stage, right? And if you want to have the best event that you can possibly create, then you should know what it's going to look like beforehand. You can't just hope and pray. You should have some solid evidence. Now, if you are looking at all of this and you're still excited, you're like, okay, I want to submit. The timeline is tricky. We always start as early as we reasonably think we can, and it is always the case that we should have started earlier. If you want to submit to SGDQ 2024, your best plan is to go home after this week is over, begin planning for a year out right away. We've run into so much rushed work over our time, creating these races and making sure that they happen, and rushed work with the scope of design that we're trying to achieve with the level of quality that we want to put on stage in order to show the community in the best light. We want to make sure that we have the time to do that. By the time the games list came out for SGDQ 2022, when our previous race was, we had at least ideas from every creator what their levels were going to be like. If we were to go back in time and redo that, we really should have had the first drafts of those levels at that point already. Don't want to be like us. All of us were spending the week leading up to that race just worrying and pouring our effort into the game that we were making instead of enjoying SGDQ. Because one of our levels is crashing the game and we need to fix it. On Wednesday, our race is in 2 days. We were making final adjustments to the files 3 hours before the run. And we don't want that to happen to anyone else. So start as early as you can. Make sure you have enough time to your planning phase. Have a solid plan before you're able to actually start working. And now, of course, no matter how early you begin pulling out work, that's not necessarily a guarantee that you get accepted to an event, right? And you kind of need to be okay with that. You can roll your submission forward, right? If you don't get accepted to SGDQ 2024, AGDQ 2025 is still an option, right? Or you could recycle it into other projects. You could roll your own events, as we've mentioned. We've done events like that ourselves. But I think as RHR, we've been approached. I'm not going to name any names, but we had an event that we were approached to build a race for in late 2022. We gathered all of the creators. We began to build the levels. We were met with complete radio silence from event.orgs, right? So the event itself never materialized. We had to free the content we generated, but that's just part of the process. It's okay. It happens. The creativity didn't go away just because the combination of that went away. The parts can still go into their own games, and we still made something interesting happen.
Yeah. And I think kind of to go back up to the idea of doing this for events other than a main stage GDQ, remember the entirety of the team structure and the relay race musical chair structure, there is no real reason for us to do that. It's as much tradition and showmanship as it is anything else. There is no reason why you can't stage an event in a different way. And I think to that point, one of the things that we had to deal with in 2022 was, yeah, we want to rotate chairs, but players have controller preference. Some of our players played on original Super Nintendo hardware. Some of our players preferred to play on modern controllers that can be adapted to work with console. But how do we help maintain that preference so that our players feel comfortable playing at a high level. That's a lot easier to do remotely than it is in person. So there are other ways that can be done. And I will also give a shout out to Fant and Fant's Hotfix show, Game Masters. Hotfix is a great opportunity for these kinds of things. And I know Fant in particular has had some custom Super Mario featured in the past, and also some races. I was a member of the Hades speedrunning community, and I remember distinctly us putting on a 6-on-6 relay race for a hotfix show. So there are a lot of opportunities out there if you want to do this for your community. You don't have to hard lock yourself into a main stage GDQ. There are a lot of different places and a lot of different communities that would be happy to showcase this kind of work. I want to talk a bit about the submission process, though, while we're here. This is something that you need to do as a team. The process right now for GDQ is that individual members of a race each submit as the race. So each individual person is responsible for their own submission, but they all submit the same thing and they all submit the same game, and they say that they're a participant in a race with so-so and so on and so forth. That's something you all need to be on the same page on when you are well ahead of the submission process. It helps to present a unified event to the games committee so that they have an idea of exactly what it is you're trying to do. You don't want racers feeling uncomfortable submitting, and you don't want racers to feel like they're part of something different because they're the only one that didn't get the memo. So one of the things that we've done, and some of the things our racers have done in the past, is for their submission video to have them either stream or record themselves first playing something within the game that they're submitting. Because what you want to show the committee is that you are a skilled racer on levels you've never seen before. So it's helpful to show off your skill, but specifically for this type of race, you need to show as a racer that you are a skilled sight reader. That's the terminology we at RHR use for first playing levels, is sight reading them. And if you can show that you have that skill to the games committee, it makes your submission that much more appealing. Again, no guarantees whatsoever, but one of the things that we've found kind of helps the games committee make the decision is if we come in as a unit, all prepared to submit in agreement and on the same page with each other. So if that's something you're planning on doing, whether it's for GDQ or for another charity event or for a hotfix, do the same thing. Get your runners on the same page and make sure everyone knows going into it what the expectation is and what the end result is going to at least try to be. And cool. Congratulations, you got accepted.
That was fast.
That was good, yeah, good job. Now the fun begins. Now you are responsible for a product. And that is a weird way to think about it, but it is the best way that we have found to think about it. At the end of the day, our race is an event that GDQ is spotlighting as part of their marathon. It then becomes our responsibility to deliver the best possible event that we can, both for ourselves and to show that GDQ made the right decision in adding us to the marathon. So now that you know for a fact that you have a stage to play on, it is now your job to make sure that everyone and everything that you're going to present is ready for that stage. This is the part that I think one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn is that when I was first getting started with putting these types of events and races together, this is the point where I thought we got started. No. This is the part where you need to go from planning to action. And ideally from already, when I say for planning, I don't mean like abstract. I mean like you have everything ready to go so that when the games list is published, if you're on it, you know exactly what comes next. And you are prepared for the process that is about to come, which is the creation process and then the honing, the testing process, which I am going to turn over to Fane because this is probably the hardest lesson we've had to learn for ourselves, and it's difficulty.
Yeah, so kind of extending upon that idea is that it is a product, and that's kind of what I see it as, is we are creating an indie game, and we are going to showcase that on the big stage at GDQ or whatever event it is. Ideally GDQ, but, and you kind of have to think of it in the way of like, what are we trying to accomplish with this product? And this is where difficulty can come in, because one of the frictions that you're going to have is difficulty. How hard is it for the racers to get through it? How hard, or how easy might it be? How long is it going to take? And that's where the race context comes in. So GDQ has time limits. That's realistic. When you have multiple levels that need to be played, you're going to have very hard limits and also very soft limits. Because you give an estimate, but your goal is not to hit the estimate. Your goal is to come in well under so that you don't, scare yourselves, you don't scare GDQ, you don't make the racers look bad. So that's one of the things that you really need to kind of pay attention to. And let's say you have 6 levels and you say an hour and a half. Well, there's math there. I'm not going to do math right now because I'm tired. But the other thing is, if you make something that is too difficult, how good are the racers going to look on stage? If they're, say, failing to the same obstacle on the first screen over and over and over for 10 minutes, that's not going to look good. It's not going to be interesting for viewers. It's not going to be interesting for commentators. There's kind of a balance between all of these different things. And that's something that you really want to look at from all perspectives. So makers want to make what they want to make, right? Racers, they all are very skilled. You're going to have skilled racers, but it's still a sight read. They've still never seen these levels. How do you know what those racers are going to do when all you have is, let's say I'm a maker. I create a level. I don't know how Carl Sagan's going to play through it. I don't know how, Juz Cook is going to play through it. So what do you do there? And that's where testers come in. And there are multiple things that you want to look for in testing. And can we move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, cool. So we have the testing and the tuning. And what we kind of mean by that is testing is, does it work? When you jump on a platform that's supposed to fall, does it fall? If you have custom code, does the custom code work? Does it crash?
Repeatedly,
all of these different things.
over and over again.
Yes. Does it crash in different ways, in very entertaining and very colorful ways? That's kind of what you want to do, is you want to make sure, does the thing that you're doing work? Separately, and this is where things like the time limit come in, you want to do tuning. And that's where you say, pretend that you're the racer, and pretend that you are on the stage, you're playing through this in front of 50,000, 100,000, however many thousands of people. What is your experience like? And the way that I think of testing, and I think about this even beyond a race event like this, every tester ideally is going to represent a part of your audience, a part of your target audience. So if I play test, there are going to be a lot of people that I'm sort of representing. And what you really want to make sure of is, who are your testers and who are they representing in the community? And so that's where variety really comes in. And also, you want to make sure that you have multiple waves of testing. Because let's say you do the first wave, like all of your creators have just given you levels. And you have 5 people who play through it. They give feedback. They say, oh, this is broken, or oh, this is too difficult. We need to address this. Then you get some changes done. There's no way that those 5 people will ever be able to have that same sight reading experience again. They will not be able to look at the level and say, yeah, I think that this is now good, because they have that previous experience, and your subsequent times are going to be a lot easier. So that's why we did different waves. Do you remember how many waves we did?
I think we ended up with 3? 3 or 4 if you count GDQ week.
Soft 4.
Softly 4.
Software.
Yeah.
And I think an important aspect is that every wave we brought in was brand new people.
Yes.
Because these are sight reading levels, it really doesn't help from a difficulty rating if the same testers are testing it over and over again, because they're going to get better. which is great most of the time. Like for what we're trying to do, like for if we're doing it for one of our weekly races, that's not an issue at all. Like that's fine. We want to get through it. It becomes really bad when time gets involved. Because if you have the same testers testing over and over and over again in the same process, by extension, their times are going to get better, but they're also going to get less realistic because it's no longer the first play. Anytime you play, I think I won't claim expertise for myself, but I know all of us have a lot of experience with Kaizo Mario, enough to say that no matter how hard a level is, it is always easier the second time you play it.
And that just is games. When you play a game the second time, it's very likely that you're going to have a much easier time because you know what to expect, because you have done it before, because you have in skill-based games some sort of muscle memory. And that's why, yes, fresh people always matter. But I think also intention matters. And one of the things that we did for the last race that I think was very crucial was we had a wave later on that was literally pretend that you are racing this level right now. Like, put aside all your distractions. You're not caring about are things broken. It's pretend you are racing. What was your time? And what is your skill level, so on and so forth. And that was extremely valuable to get a lot of feedback on, are these levels too hard? Are they, where are they too hard? What can we change? Is this going to be a good experience for the 8 people that we have on stage at the time?
I think one of the things that happened for us is, and it's one of my favorite stories, is in our first kind of wave of, we started out calling them ringers, but really what they were just some of the people we knew that were extremely skilled. Among those was a person by the name of LinkDead X2, who is familiar to some of you. And LinkDead about halved the estimate for all the levels. And we were like, hey, this is good, right? Like, we're coming in solidly under estimate on all the levels. And then we got more data. And then we got more data. And y'all, it turns out LinkDead's really good at Mario. If that's news to you, I apologize, but LinkDead's pretty good at this game. But if we hadn't gotten that extra data from some of our other racers, we might have just rolled with the one thing we had and been like, all right, hey, if LinkDead can do it in 8 minutes, so can everyone else, right? We're not all LinkDead. There's only one of those. And even the racers who are as skilled as they come, they're racing on stage. You racing on your home setup with your controller on your monitor, you're going to be in a better position to succeed than a racer is. Plus, the pressure, that doesn't even count the pressure that you might feel from the audience and from the situation. So you need an army. I think if you go and pull the credits up for Hidden Thwimple, the final playtester count's probably 24, like from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And one of the things we were doing up until 3 hours before was adding people to the credits because we kept needing more people to play test.
Yeah. I think it's important to mention as well, like, while we're getting all of these playtesters, in an ideal world, every one of your playtesters is on par with the racers. In reality, there's only so many people at that skill level. So you want to make sure that they don't all see the level in the first wave. You want to make sure that as you keep iterating on your level design, that you have people who are skilled enough to be, good stand-ins for how the racers are going to react on stage, even if this is the 3rd version or the 4th version or theoretically a 5th version.
Or 6th or 7th, or sometimes if it's needed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So fortunately for us in the Super Mario World community, there is no shortage of talent. And as we said, there was testing at the event. We had so many skilled players at the event. I know some of you are in this room who saw those levels before the race. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you so much.
It was really, really glad that we were able to put on that show. But it wouldn't have been possible without you, right?
Playtesting is one of the most valuable things that you can do. and especially if you have the variety, as I was saying, and just kind of understanding you're picking people who represent your target audience, and you're picking people ideally that can help you decide and project what is the experience that you're going to get. Link Dead, I love Link Dead. That's not necessarily the experience that racers are going to be having on stage. For contrast, one of the levels, half of one of the levels took me an hour the first time before we started tuning it.
Thank goodness we started tuning that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, I am not, the best Mario player in the world. However, I do represent part of the community. Yeah.
And I think when we say tuning, we're tuning. When you tune to a reference pitch, and I think for us, the reference pitch goes back to the experience we're trying to generate. We're tuning our levels to a race, which is different than tuning levels to just a normal game you might be creating or some other context. There were some significant friction points, I think, that we as producers and testers had with certain creators, because in the Kaizo Mario creation scene, motive matters in creation. Your motive in making a game comes through in your final product. And many creators create for different reasons, and they create because they want specific types of experiences for the players. We are limiting our creators in that sense. We are forcing our creators to assume an experience for the player. And sometimes we have disagreements about what that looks like, and sometimes we have pushback from makers as to what that translates to. Ultimately, you need to hold firm to your reference pitch, and I think that was one of the things that I think saved us so much, was how firmly we stuck to the idea of, no matter how cool it is, no matter how exciting, no matter how just gratifying it is, if it can't be raced safely, and by safe I mean safe relative to time estimate, we have to change it. That has to come first and foremost above all other factors. And that's not I will admit this, that's not the best creative environment.
But for a race, the coolest thing is the thing that gets completed.
Yes, as I tend to say when I'm working with RHR, the swaggiest strat of them all is hitting the big tape at the end of the level. And you want to give your racers a chance to hit the big tape, or collect the orb, or make the key exit, or whatever it is they choose to do for that level.
And I think it's also very important to think about, it's not just about making the racers look good. It's not just about making RHR look good, or whatever community you are. It's about making everyone look good. If, from the maker perspective, if the level doesn't get finished because it was too hard and the racers just can't get through it, what if the audience only sees half of your level, and then we have to pull the e-brake, and suddenly, your level just gets cut off, and that has to feel terrible, and nobody wants that. So it's to make the maker look good. It's to make the racers look good, because the racers don't want to be stuck on one obstacle for 10, 15 minutes, however long it is. And it just makes the whole event look good. It makes commentary look good. Commentary trying to talk about the same obstacles being hit over and over again, that's not a good narrative. And really what you're putting together is a narrative through this. You're putting together an experience for, here's a relay race. And so it's it shouldn't be seen as a friction that is adversarial. It should be seen as a friction that helps get everyone to the best experience that everyone's going to have.
One last note before we kind of turn it over is, we do this every week. Well, not this week. We don't do it this week. But we do it probably 49 to 50 weeks of the year. We have one-off level races. And like we said at the beginning, we started doing these 5 years ago after SGDQ 2018, and we haven't stopped. And part of the reason for that is we wanted this to celebrate the community. So we have done our best to build what I call the community center of the Kaizo Mario area of the internet, we have basically a place for people to come and celebrate and learn how to play and make Mario. We've kind of served as the foundation for a lot of creators and a lot of players to kind of get their feet wet on both ends of it in a safer, controlled, celebratory space where if they're playing, they can see exactly how hard of a thing they're signing up for, and they can see relative what they can expect to get into. And from makers, they get a week of playtesting with some of the most experienced playtesters in our community, which has gone on to lend itself to some absolutely incredible experiences. We have our team, in addition to the three of us, GlitchCat7, who was there literally on day one, is still heavily involved as an admin. I also want to give a shout out to Kelgand, who has done a lot of work in building the tools we use, which is its entirely own panel discussion, I want to be clear. And I want to give a shout out to Ampersand, who is one of the best organizers of custom resources that Super Mario World could ever hope to have. They have helped us empower creators to create things. They were heavily involved in helping us get the start going for this relay, and they deserve a lot of shout out. We are blessed to have a community, a team, and the resources at our disposal to really turn around and make players and makers look as good as they can. And that's our goal. And honestly, that's why we do it. I don't play nearly as much Super Mario as 90% of the people in our community. I know Fawful is mainly a tasser within the community. Fane is a player and maker, has two full games out themselves, but we do this part of it because it's our way to say thanks and to give back to a community that has done a lot for us. The people involved in custom Super Mario, especially those of us that have had this sort of connection with GDQ, it means a lot to us on a personal level. We have gained a lot from it personally, and this type of thing is our chance to give back and to show the world why we love it so much, why we love the games and the people. And other communities can do this too, but it's going to take you being willing to sacrifice. It's going to take some work, it's going to take some friction, and it's going to take a lot of sacrifice. But I promise you, if you enjoyed the experiences that you saw on stage at SGDQ, it's worth it for your community too. If you're willing to do it right, it will benefit your community immensely. So I think with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions for everyone, but this is where you can find us online. We also are on, most of our work happens in our Discord, and you can find links to our Discord on our website and our Twitch channel. I don't know why I put two Twitch channels on here, but they're the same one, don't worry.
Just in case.
I think it's because I didn't want to type out the full Discord link because, I mean, you can't click a video. But if you go to romhackraces.com, you can find our Discord server, and that's where the bulk of the good stuff happens. So we would love to see you. We'd love to see you join us. Tune in every Saturday night at 8 Eastern for another level race. They're really fun. They really are. Even if you're not playing, they're just fun to watch and cheer on everyone. But yeah, we have the microphone here in the center. If anyone has any questions about how we do, what we do, how we do it, some of the things we've been involved in the past, we'd be happy to take some questions at this time. And I know it's hard to ask the first one, but yeah. If you could come to the mic, because this is being recorded, so we just need to be able to hear you.
Now I'm more nervous. No, I think, and thank you for this, by the way. This is great. I think at the beginning of this, you said that there are some lessons or things that you learned from this past year that when you guys do this again in the future, that you would do differently. Can you highlight some of those, or specifically, like maybe not went wrong, but maybe what didn't go as expected? And what you might do differently?
So I think this is the time to talk about how I got involved.
I think it is time to talk about how Fawful got involved.
So, as RHR, we made an announcement. I want to say June 1st?
Yeah,
That sounds right. so that's when we announced that we were publishing this game that was going to be featured in the relay. And for me, as Fearful Fawful, personally, I had zero involvement up until this point. I had heard absolutely nothing about it. And I reached out to Doc. I asked, as an admin who's been involved in RHR for a while, can I get in on this? Can I actually help with this? And of course, they allowed me to join. Thank you for that.
I'm so glad I did that, by the way.
So I get into our super secret Discord server that's even more secret than the standard one that we just asked you to join. And I'm looking at the times. And the times are fine, I guess. They're, like 15 to 20 minutes a piece for our mid to high tier testers. And, there's the standout like hour for one of the levels. And of course, that one clearly needs to get nerfed, but we're not exactly sure how hard it needs to get nerfed. How much easier do we need to make it? And keep in mind, SGQ 2022 is happening at the end of July. We should have an actual game significantly before then. So start of June is when I'm getting involved. I'm seeing these times, and I ask, can we compare these to last year's times? Or, well, the last year that we could do it.
2019.
And the comparison did not look good. We had times in those levels, I believe they were generally under 10 minutes a piece, 5 minutes. Like, if you're in your comfortable home setup and you're playing this and you have even lesser skill level than the racers, we're shooting for 5 minutes. And, like, that comparison is not looking good for our current year, right? So I'm the one who really started like pushing for that second, that third, that fourth wave of testing, making sure that we could get that hour level down to the 10 to 15 minutes that we actually wanted it to be in. And fortunately for us, all of the levels did get completed that year.
Barely.
So
The one of them snuck in right at the buzzer. Thank you, Barb. But they all
it counts. It got completed on
counts.
stage.
It counts,
It got
yes.
completed on stage. But yeah.
I think one of the other things that to kind of jump on that is write your things down as you do them. Because the biggest issue we had in 2022 is we had no institutional memory from 2019. We just kind of, I was not as involved in the production side of it. I was more involved in sort of the promotion and the community managing side of it. But we just kind of rolled it in 2019. And there's a couple people here that were involved. Dee was involved with it. Dan, the VP, was involved in it. It was much less formal and much less structured. And when it came time to do it again in 2022, we wanted to do it bigger, we wanted to do it better, but we didn't have a plan in place to do it. And I think one of the things that Fawful brought with him when he joined was, okay, if you want to do this right, you need a plan, and you need to stick to the plan, and you need to hold people accountable to the plan, and you need to hold yourselves accountable to the plan. And we didn't have that before Fawful joined, and I want to make sure that everyone here knows that he's the one that helped bring that to the front. But I think going forward, one of the things that we, quite seriously, the 2 weeks after, we sat down and we said, okay, how are we going to do this next time? And this was a year ago now. We knew at that point we weren't going to be ready to do it for this GDQ. at all. We knew a year ago that we couldn't have done it this year. We're probably going to go home from this GDQ and quite literally start up the server for a potential submission for next year now, because that's what we've learned we need to do if we want to do it right. That's a lesson we had to learn the hard way, a lesson that a lot of people worked a lot of time and lost a lot of sleep and took on a lot of stress to learn for us. It's something that I personally feel very guilty about. It's something that and I've been told by many people that I don't need to feel as guilty as I do, but a lot of people worked very hard to make up for the fact that we should have planned better. And going forward, I want to make sure that we plan well enough that we don't have to put people through what they went through to make Legends of the Hidden Thwimple become a reality.
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to that early slide, which is start planning early, and then even before you think you need to start planning, start planning.
Yeah.
Because we were putting together things very close to GDQ and also at GDQ, and it's not a good experience for the people involved.
No, it's not.
Something that may be a little bit more Mario World specific, but it was also kind of a lesson that we learned. There's a lot of custom code floating around the Mario community. And a lot of that is considered foundational. RHR has a base ROM that just contains all of the standard patches that tend to elevate the experience beyond your standard Super Mario World gameplay into what we consider the fan game gold standard, right? So faster retry, slightly less janky frame rules. You actually get interaction on every frame.
Things you wouldn't appreciate unless you knew the game and knew the changes being made.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of fixes just to smooth out that experience. But there's also a couple of patches that are a little bit more technical that, because they interact with the game on a more base level, there's sometimes incompatibilities, right? So knowing what you're putting in your game before unexpected behavior pops up, because you were using something from your base ROM or something along those lines, and now you're trying to pull in a level that was created by some creator potentially independently of your base ROM. And those two will clash at some point. And how well you understand what you put in will determine how easy that is to debug later, right? So a lot of potentially standard game dev stuff, right? Knowing how to collaborate, knowing how to use GitHub. We use a lot of GitHub for making sure that our features were tracked, our version history was maintained. So, on that more technical side, know what tools are available to you, know how you're using them.
And I want to give a shout out real quick to Underway, who is a developer that's worked a lot on tools to make SMW compatible with Git. If you don't know what that means, just know it makes the process of controlling your own version history a lot better. And we're really fortunate that Underway works a lot with us on tools that we use in our base ROM and otherwise. So we do our best to set ourselves up, but you have to plan ahead, and you have to be willing to stick to the plan and hold others accountable to the plan. Other questions?
Hello.
Hi, Baba.
So it sounded like, so there's a lot of planning, and it seems like y'all know moving forward how to kind of go better about these relays. Obviously, though, this puts a lot of effort and energy still into these. So the question I kind of ask is, it sounds like there might be the potential that y'all would want to do more of these relays, maybe yearly, bi-yearly. Is there kind of a thought process on how RHR is wanting to do these relays moving forward in terms of next year or every yearly or bi-yearly?
that's a kind of, I don't want to say that's a complicated question, but it's not entirely up, no, I'll get closer to the mic, sorry. It's not entirely up to us. One of the things that is important is you really can't race without racers. And more importantly, you can't submit to a marathon without racers. We can't, as the three of us, submit a run on behalf of someone else playing. I know Dana's not in here right now, but I'm pretty certain I would be able to confirm that with GDQ staff. If you submit something, you have to play it, and no one wants to watch me play custom Super Mario World on the GDQ stage. I am the last person that wants to be on stage. So,
And I'm pretty sure they don't allow the emulators that I use for tasking either.
so I mean, Fang could do it, but I'm not sure that's necessarily something they want to do either. So honestly, before anything else, you need to know who's going to be racing. And that kind of limits the opportunity because depending on the event, you get people that may not be able to commit this early on. You may not be able to anticipate who is or who isn't able to travel if it is an in-person thing. And I think ultimately, we also, realistically, it's a lot of work. And all three of us have day jobs on top of this. This is none of our job is RHR. And so in order to do it right, we have to give up a lot of our time. And that's just too much time to give up more than once every couple of years, to be honest with you, for us or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah, and burnout is real, and it can hurt you.
And I mean, we talked earlier about all of the different roles. So you have the racers, you have the makers, you have producers, so on and so forth, testers. None of us are paid. This is like our HR does not sign my paychecks. Honestly, I don't want them to sign my paychecks. I do it because it's very important to me. But yeah, as Doc said, like it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of people's work. We had however many dozen people working all told for this this last production. That's many person hours.
I want to say it was close to 70 or 75 people by the end of it had credits in Hidden Thwimple.
And a lot of that work happened at GDQ as well. So there were people, we talked about getting people to help test later versions as we were trying to get things fixed, get things tuned. That's time being taken at GDQ from people attending GDQ to have fun at GDQ. And I thank all of you who did that.
Yes.
And I also want to shout out Dieter the Fourth and Mark Alarm for doing a lot of work on the production of the game itself. I know it was stressful for all of us, and I truly do appreciate the amount of work that y'all did, as well as our testers, as well as Fawful, as well as Dr. No, as well as Glitchcat.
As well as Fane.
As well as Fane, yes.
Like, I'm not going to thank myself.
Well,
let
that's what I'm
thank-
here for.
Yeah, let us thank you.
But no, like I was putting around 8 hours a day at GDQ up until Friday on this thing.
We're talking triple-digit hours total. I think it's easy to say.
But
Just
Maybe
a
even
week.
quadruple, like all people.
Yeah, added up together, it may have topped 1,000 hours. Definitely at least 100 hours combined at GDQ, easy.
yeah, but like that's one of the things that I wouldn't repeat anyway is doing it at GDQ. That's why I say plan early, get things done early, test things early. But that work still has to be done.
Yeah.
It has to be done at some point. So it really is just a lot to ask, and a lot of things have to line up and just work out. And yeah, maybe yearly could happen, but it's all about the resources, right? It's all about the people. And yes.
We want to do it right.
Yep.
Too. Not just right by the product, but right by the people.
Now, I believe we are at 6 o'clock. I know Tech has generously offered to let us stay a little bit extra, so if we have one or two more questions, then we take those, and if not, all good as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thanks again to GDQ for giving us the platform to talk about this. For those of you here and for those of you that are going to be watching this on YouTube, I hope that you learned something from, because learn something from all the work that we have done. And I do sincerely hope that more communities take this up for themselves. Because by far, these are the coolest things I've had a chance to work on in my tenure in the community. And it really doesn't come close, but it's needed to be that much work. So going forward, I hope to see more of these types of things, both from us and from other communities. I'm excited for this. I really think this is the best possible platform for communities, and if we can help other communities do that, that's what we're here for.
Yep. And I've lost count of the amount of people who have told me specifically the relay race from 2019 is why I joined the Super Mario World community and why I joined, this.
Yeah.
And it's just been amazing to see the community grow and to keep being a part of that. And your community can do that too. And just keep growing stronger, keep empowering each other, empower the community, raise money. Remember, this is GDQ. Please donate.
And stick around Friday evening. Shoujo is going to be running Sure Shot, and you're going to want to see that because that is a beautiful game. Saturday, Grand Pooh Bear is making a return to the stage as a solo runner to run Baron of Shell, which might be the flashiest Kaizo game ever featured at a GDQ. If you like people throwing shells around, oh boy, you're in for a treat. So check those out later this week. There's also the Mario Maker. If you want to see our cousins that have done it longer and who have given us many ideas to steal, the Mario Maker community, and I know Jank Pickles here as a creator for that. I think that's pretty much known at this point. Yeah. They will be doing their relay race right before Pooh's run on Saturday night. So I hope to see you all there. Hope to see everyone out in the crowd. And thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great rest of GDQ.